Is debt always bad? There is something almost moral about the way human consciousness relates to owing money. The word debt carries weight beyond its mathematical meaning. It suggests not just a financial obligation, but a kind of spiritual deficit, a stain on one's character, a failure of virtue. But observe what actually happens when we examine debt without the emotional coloring that surrounds it. A young woman borrows money to complete her education. The numbers on paper show a negative balance, but her capacity to contribute to the world expands exponentially. The debt represents not a loss, but an investment in human potential. Years later, the mathematical obligation will be settled, but the knowledge gained remains permanently. This is debt as a bridge between present limitation and future possibility. Yet in another scenario, someone accumulates debt through compulsive purchases, seeking to fill an inner emptiness with external acquisition. Here, debt becomes a symptom of a deeper disconnection, a mathematical expression of the attempt to solve psychological problems through material means. Same mechanism, entirely different meaning. The fascinating thing about debt is how completely it depends on context for its value. The mortgage that enables home ownership, the loan that launches a business, the credit that bridges temporary cash flow gaps, these can be tools of empowerment. But the debt accumulated through mindless consumption, emotional spending, or keeping up with social expectations, this same mechanism becomes a form of self-imposed imprisonment. This suggests that debt itself is neither inherently good nor bad. It is neutral, like fire or water, potentially beneficial or destructive depending on how it is used. But our cultural conditioning rarely allows for such nuance. We inherit stories about debt that are painted in absolute terms. Neither a borrower nor a lender be, Shakespeare wrote, reflecting a worldview where financial obligation is inherently problematic. Yet some of history's greatest innovations emerged from borrowed capital. Entire civilizations have been built on systems of credit and investment. The ability to leverage future earnings for present opportunities has created extraordinary possibilities for human development. The question is not whether debt is good or bad, but what relationship we have with it. Watch what happens in the mind when someone first encounters significant debt. There is often shame, even when the borrowing was for worthy purposes. The psychological weight can exceed the financial burden. Sleep becomes restless. Self-worth diminishes. The number on the statement transforms into a judgment about personal character. But observe what happens when the same person reframes their understanding. The student loan becomes gratitude for educational opportunity. The business loan becomes appreciation for entrepreneurial possibility. The mortgage becomes recognition of investment in stability and growth. The numbers remain identical. The psychological experience transforms completely. This is not about positive thinking or denial of financial reality. This is about recognizing that our relationship to debt is often more burdensome than the debt itself. There are people who live completely debt-free yet remain imprisoned by fear of financial obligation. They miss opportunities for growth, education, or investment because they have demonized borrowing beyond all proportion to its actual risks. Their avoidance of debt becomes its own form of limitation. Conversely, there are individuals who use debt skillfully, as artists use their tools, with precision, purpose, and awareness of both possibilities and dangers. They borrow when the potential return exceeds the cost, and they do so without attaching moral significance to the mathematical relationship. The difference lies not in the presence or absence of debt, but in the consciousness that engages with it. What if debt is simply information? A temporary imbalance between resources needed and resources available? What if it carries no more inherent moral weight than the weather? This perspective does not dismiss the real consequences of unmanageable debt. Financial obligations can create genuine stress, limit options, and impact quality of life. But these are practical considerations, not spiritual judgments. The person drowning in debt, accumulated through compulsive spending, faces real challenges that require practical solutions. But adding layers of shame and moral condemnation to the mathematical problem only makes resolution more difficult. Similarly, the entrepreneur who borrows to fund innovation, or the family who mortgages for a home, or the student who invests in education. These individuals need not carry emotional burdens alongside their financial obligations. Perhaps the most interesting question is not whether debt is good or bad, but why we have such intense emotional reactions to a mathematical arrangement. In some cultures, debt relationships are seen as bonds that strengthen community connections. The borrower and lender become invested in each other's success. The financial obligation creates ongoing relationship rather than mere transaction. In other contexts, debt is viewed as pure mathematics, numbers to be managed, optimized, and resolved without emotional drama. The focus remains on practical strategies rather than moral implications. Our relationship to debt often reflects our relationship to interconnection itself. To borrow is to acknowledge that we do not exist as isolated individuals, that our lives are woven together through exchanges of resources and support. The person who refuses all debt may be expressing not just financial prudence, but a deeper reluctance to be vulnerable, to be connected, to acknowledge interdependence. Can we hold debt lightly, neither seeking it compulsively nor avoiding it neurotically? Can we use it as a tool when appropriate while remaining unattached to it as an identity? In the space between debt-seeking and debt-fearing, something more balanced emerges. A practical relationship with financial obligations that recognizes both their utility and their limitations. What is this that owes nothing to anyone yet remains connected to everything? This freedom that transcends both having and owing. This abundance that depends neither on accumulation nor on borrowing.